Hello friends, and a warm welcome to the Slow Living Collective podcast. I am Amy, wife, mother of two and devoted homemaker. Join me on this journey as we explore the beauty of slow and simple living, where life unfolds at its own unhurried pace. These episodes are love notes from me, sharing the things that I sometimes need to hear myself as well. I'll take you through my experiences of slowing down, tending to my allotment plot and balcony garden, finding joy in the little things, and embracing our wonderful small home. In these episodes, I delve into what it means to walk a different path, stepping outside societal norms and embracing all the beauty it provides. Together, we'll learn how to live in harmony with the ever-changing seasons, discovering the magic of living in the present moment. I welcome you to come on this journey with me and maybe open your mind to a different way of living. I hope you find what you're looking for in the words of these episodes, and I hope they speak to you in your own unique way. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Slow Living Collective podcast. If you're new here, hi, I'm Amy, and I haven't recorded for a while, and I feel like I say that quite a lot on this podcast, and I think it's because I batch, so I feel like I say it all the time, but maybe it's not as frequent as I think it might be. But anyway, I am back today and I am so excited because spring is here. Like, I am literally recording this last minute, and it's a little bit of two things. One thing was I wanted to wait and record this episode until it was actually spring so I could come with the actual energy I was feeling, because obviously sometimes when you're a podcast creator, you kind of put things on, like you batch create essentially, and you are essentially sometimes talking about things in a season that you're not currently in. And I wanted to save this episode until I was actually in the season, but it is Sunday night. This episode goes live tomorrow morning on Monday, so yeah, it's a little bit last minute. And the other reason was I have just spent the entire weekend at the allotment, and it's glorious. It just felt like spring this weekend, and I hope it did where you are as well. Now, I want to preface this episode by saying if you can hear my walking pad going in the background, I am incredibly sorry. My husband got a new work desk. It's a standing desk. We bought a folding walking pad. I'm so excited to find a small, affordable folding walking pad. Now, you guys know I live in a small home, and I'm always trying to find ways in which to find things that really work in my home. Well, I had to pause the episode there and actually slow down the walking pad because I was starting to get out of breath doing both things. So that wasn't going to bode well for the whole episode. So yeah, we've got this new walking pad, and I thought what would be better than to put it on while I'm recording a podcast episode. So if you hear a bit of clonking in the background, it's my heavy feet. I'm a bit heavy-footed. But yeah, great to be able to exercise while I am walking. But just a side note, I did eat a Lion bar before I got on the walking pad, so I probably just negated all of that really. But hey, I enjoyed it, and that is the main thing. So let's dive into today's episode. And I don't know about you, but there is something about spring. It just feels like this really deep, slow inhale after all the stillness of winter. And like I said, I have intentionally waited to record this episode. Like I said, I often record ahead of time, but I really just wanted to capture the essence of getting towards the end of the winter season and coming into spring. Now, of course, there are multiple dates associated with spring. There's meteorological spring, beginning at the beginning of March, although many people, myself included, feel the true beginning of spring is around spring equinox, which is much later in the month. But for me as well, I feel the pull of spring when February changes to March. And then I feel like its true beginning is by the time spring equinox rolls around. Now, the days are getting longer, the world is waking up, and with that comes this collective urge to do more, be more, go faster. But today I want to pose this to you. What if we did the opposite? What if instead of rushing to keep up with the energy of the season, instead we just softened into it? And that's exactly what we're diving into today. How we can gently step into spring while keeping that slow, intentional pace that we crave. Now, spring is often framed as a season of fresh starts and new beginnings. And I myself am completely guilty of this comparison. But in reality, nature just doesn't flip a switch at the end of winter to full bloom spring overnight. The transition is gradual. The first tiny buds on the trees that we're seeing, the way the air shifts, and it feels ever so slightly different. And it's kind of before we even notice. And yet in our modern lives, we tend to treat this season like a green light to just go full speed ahead. More plans, more commitments, more pressure to spring clean every corner of our lives. But what if we approach this season differently? What if we let spring be an invitation to slow down rather than speed up? I felt this tension in myself, let's be honest. Just the other day, I caught myself making this massive to-do list, feeling like I needed to reorganize every single section of my house, deep clean it all, plan out the perfect spring activities for my family, plan the allotment. And then I was just standing outside with my coffee, just watching the sky. I have a beautiful, beautiful view from my balcony. It's just absolutely lush. And I was just looking around at my balcony. I've got a lot of dead plants from last year, but I've also got a few things that are just starting to grow. And it hit me. Spring never rushes. It doesn't rush. It unfolds. And maybe I also need to take a cue from nature and do the same. So if you're feeling that pull between wanting to embrace this new season and wanting to maintain a slow, simple rhythm, then this episode is for you. Because we're going to talk about how to ease into spring with intention, embrace the shifts without the stress, and create space for slowness even when life feels like it's picking up speed. So does that sound good? All right, then let's dive in. Now, one of the simplest and most powerful ways to slow down as life speeds up is to just anchor ourselves in the present moment. Because when the world feels like it's moving too fast, when our calendars start filling up and our to-do lists just grow, don't they? And just the energy of the season just naturally seems to urge us to do more. Being more mindful can just be this really gentle pause that can really help us recalibrate. And I find the best part of that is that it doesn't have to be complicated. You don't need to be doing some sort of fancy meditation. In fact, I think meditation often immediately scares people and makes them think like, no, I can't do that. My mind wanders too much. I've heard that so many times. I can't meditate because my mind wanders. And I always want to scream, that's the point. That's the point. Because actually that naturally happens in meditation. My mind is always wandering. And, the important thing is when you notice it. So meditation is obviously about, just bringing your mind back. So when it wanders, which it naturally will, bring it back. That's all you need to do. But it doesn't have to be this big meditation or, have an hour of free time. Sometimes it's as simple as taking a single deep breath. So maybe we should try something together. Wherever you are, whether you're doing the washing up, whether you're sitting in the car, or maybe you're out walking the dog, I want you to take a slow, intentional inhale through your nose. And then just hold it for a second at the top and then let it out and release any tension that you might be holding. Okay, let's do it again. Breathe in deeply. Hold it. And now exhale fully. Do you feel the difference? That tiny pause, that conscious breath. It is a reset button and you can pretty much press that anytime throughout your day. And it's a reminder that you get to set the pace no matter what is happening around you. And if working with your breath isn't your thing, maybe mindful walking is. Instead of rushing from one place to another, try slowing your steps down. Notice the feeling as your feet connect with the ground and just tune into the world around you. Maybe it's the bird song or the scent of the fresh earth when you're gardening, the warmth of the spring sun on your face, or maybe you might want to journal, or maybe you just want to take a moment to jot down a simple reflection like, how do I want to feel this season? Or what can I let go of to create more space? Even just a few minutes putting these things down onto paper can really shift our energy. And the key to mindfulness isn't about perfection at all, like I said. It is about doing it consistently. So you don't have to carve out this huge chunk of time to make it part of your life. Just start small, set a reminder to pause, and take 3 deep breaths before you have your morning coffee. Or turn off the radio for the first few minutes of your drive and just sit in silence. Maybe you might want to step outside for a moment in the middle of your day to just be. All of these little rituals may seem insignificant, but they have the power to shift the way you move through the season, helping you step into spring gently and with more intention and more presence. And here's the key thing. Mindfulness doesn't have to be a separate thing that you add to what is already a full plate. It is something you can weave into your daily life in tiny, really accessible ways. Maybe you take 3 deep breaths before you pour your morning coffee. Or maybe you step outside first before diving into your email inbox. Maybe you pause for a second before you respond to a text message and just check in with yourself. Because these small moments of presence really add up and help create this more intentional rhythm. And this is going to be the kind of rhythm that allows you to really step into spring gently and without getting swept up in the rush of the world around us. Now, there is something about spring that completely calls us outside, doesn't it? I definitely felt that this weekend, because after months of shorter days, colder weather, the world is finally waking up. I noticed buds on my apple trees. The bird song at the allotment was incredible, and it felt warm. It felt warm really for the first time in such a long time. And while it's still cold, it felt warmer. And just like nature, we are waking up too. And we have that transition from winter to spring, and I really think that when we switch the seasons over, I must say, I think my favourite time of year, all year round, is the change of the seasons. I love that change of the seasons, whatever season it is. I love it when we change from winter to spring, of course. I love it when we move from spring to summer. I love it when we change from summer to autumn, because although I love the sun and I love the heat, and there's a lot of things to love about summer, I also really love autumn as well. And then I guess, if I'm being completely honest, I didn't always notice the switch between autumn to winter. I do try and pay attention, but it's 2 sides of the same coin sometimes by the time you get to sort of like the end of November and into December, and we're busy with Christmas and things like that. But I love these crossover periods that switch over. And yeah, I think switching from winter to spring really does make us feel like we're ready to reconnect with the world around us. And I think so often we confuse what spending time in nature is. We always hear about spending time outside, getting out in nature, getting the children out in nature, and you'll feel so much better. But spending time in nature doesn't have to be this big grand adventure. You don't need to hike up a mountain or plan some massive elaborate outdoor excursion. You can simply step outside your front or back door and just notice what is changing around you. And I am a big fan. I think sometimes actually we we're on the internet and we see all of these things, you know, like people doing stuff outside, and we're a big sort of outdoors family in the sense, you know, we love being outside. I spend a lot of my time outside. I have the kids outside a lot. You know, we have our allotment, we have our balcony. We just spend a lot of time naturally outside. And, you know, particularly spring, summer and autumn. But I am also, and I know this is a little bit contradictory to a lot of stuff we see on the internet, like, you know, you can, you know, of course you can be outside in the winter, and of course you can. No one is saying you can't. But I also really love indoors in the winter. I like the coziness of being inside. I don't always want to be freezing cold. To be perfectly honest, I love being outside. I was on my allotment in January, as I am every year, but I'm not necessarily out there all the time in the winter, and I just appreciate the rest. And I know sometimes, like, I look at other people that are growing and doing stuff on their own allotments, and I love following everybody that grows. You know, I just love seeing what everyone's doing, and everybody does different things. And something I really, really love about my allotment is it has quite heavy clay soil, which means I have to be mindful about standing on it when it is cold and wet so I don't compact the soil. And beyond that, what I really love is that I don't garden in December, January or February for the most part. Now, I'll often pop to the allotment in January. I might spend a day clearing up, having a look about, thinking what I need to do. If the weather plays ball in February, again, I might spend a couple of days there getting things prepped. And just seeing what I need to do. So, for example, this year in January, so we, of course, lost my granddad in the middle of November last year. We spent a lot of time having to clear his house out, and then we ended up moving his apple trees to my allotment, and a lot of the stuff from his garden, I say a lot of stuff, all of the stuff from his garden. My granddad was a big gardener, and I used to love sitting down with him and talking about gardening stuff and listening to him, and yeah, it was really fantastic. And so I wanted to make sure, you know, when he passed away, he always said to me, and I might have said this in a previous episode, he always used to say to me, when I die, make sure you take those apple trees. And so, you know, those apple trees, goodness me, I had many sleepless nights worried about moving them. So far, luckily, because I was moving them in winter, they're pretty dormant. So that was good. And I'm seeing the first buds on them. So fingers crossed that, you know, they will be okay. I think they will. I'm feeling quite positive about them. But we bought those and a lot of his pots. He had a lot of pots in his garden. He had sort of like a patio kind of garden. I bought a lot of pots, lots of decorative stuff like little ornaments, trellis. I even took his trellis off his wall. I didn't want to leave anything behind. I wanted to rehome it and I wanted to give it space in my allotment. And so for me in winter, you know, in January and February when I was there, it was a lot of organising because I had bought a huge amount of stuff to the allotment, you know, at the back end of last year. And so, like, just sorting out pots and putting them around and figuring out what was going to go where. And, you know, I'm not even anywhere near done with that. But those are the sort of things that I do through the winter. I also, so in my greenhouse, in the winter, I have a lot of shelving up to obviously, so I can plant and like sow a lot of my seeds, and you know everything's in there until the mass plant out in like May time. And then in the summer, what I generally do is I do have a small raised bed that we built into the floor in the greenhouse, but I also have grow bags as well. So I take all of the racking down and then put grow bags out. So another thing that I did this winter was I got all of the shelving put back together so that I can put it in and be ready for seed sowing. And that's been really helpful that I was able to do that ahead of time. So while I'm still outside, I do like to be inside too. I do like to rest. And the way I garden particularly is that from now on I will probably spend a lot of time at the allotment. Spring is obviously like peak gardening season, lots of seed sowing, raising small plants, getting them planted out. This is the busiest time of year. And then we go into summer, a lot of maintenance, a lot of weeding, and then move into autumn and harvest, and then getting things prepped on the allotment ahead of winter. And then I don't generally go to the allotment much past the end of October or the beginning of November. And you won't see me there for most of November. You won't see me there at all in December. And you might see me, like I said, a little bit in January and a little bit in February. And I find that moment really important, that, nature rests, and so do I, because I work really hard on that allotment all year round. And, particularly ahead of spring, which is, like I said, is the busiest of all. And I need that rest. I need that time away. I need that disconnect, so that I can come to it feeling fresh and renewed and ready to go again. And otherwise, I think I burn out. And to be honest, sometimes I think I burn out on the allotment anyway, because like I said, spring is such an intense period of time that it feels like a lot. And so I need to figure out how I can manage that this year, because by the time June rolls around, I'm often like, I don't care if these plants live or die at this point, after caring for them for so long. So, while yes, being outside is great, I think sometimes we put a massive emphasis on it, and I think it's another thing that just ebbs and flows with the seasons, and you shouldn't have to feel that you have to do it in the winter if you don't want to. And it's perfectly okay to stay indoors if you like. But also, like I said, it doesn't have to be this big elaborate excursion outside. So you can maybe take like a mindful walk in a park nearby and just feel the ground beneath your feet, listen to the rustle of the leaves. If you have a garden or a balcony, spend some time tending to them and just watch them as they shift day by day. And it could, if you've got a balcony like me, maybe it's as simple as sitting on your balcony or in your back garden with a cup of tea or coffee and just watching the light change. Like, I absolutely love watching the sunset. So that's one of my things. But nature is always teaching us, and we just have to slow down enough to listen. So, you've heard people say, like just like nature, you bloom in your own time. And it's so true. Because think about flowers. They absolutely bloom in their own time. Some of them burst open the second the sun stays a little longer, while others take their time. And there's no rush. There is no urgency. Just this quiet trust in the rhythm of the seasons. And so I want to pose this to you. What if we gave ourselves that grace too? What if we stopped forcing ourselves to move at a speed that doesn't feel natural and instead just honoured growth at our own pace? So when we step into spring, as we are now, just observe. Just observe. Step outside, observe not just the beauty of spring, but the slowness of it all. And when you notice that slowness, let that be your permission to do the same thing. Because spring isn't about racing to the next thing, it is about emerging gently, intentionally, and in your own perfect timing. I have something so exciting for you, and I'm sure you're going to love it just as much as me. As of today, my small space homesteading bundle is live, and this has been something that I have been dreaming of doing for such a long time, and I just needed to get into character for it. So my small space homesteading bundle is filled with everything you need to start your small space homesteading journey. Now, I have gardened on my balcony for 8 years and exclusively for 5 years before I got the allotment. And I promise you, it is so much fun. You will become obsessed with it because you don't need acres of land to start growing your own food or preserving your harvests or even living more sustainably. And the Small Space Homesteading Bundle is here to show you just how to make the most of whatever space you have. So whether it's a balcony, a back garden, or even just a windowsill, you can do it, I promise. So inside the Small Space Homesteading Bundle, you will find so many practical beginner-friendly guides on everything from container gardening to composting, creating your homestead kitchen, food preservation, everything. No overwhelm, no complicated setups, just really simple, doable steps to bring a little homesteading magic into your life, whatever size you have to play with. So, what's inside? There's the beginner's guide to small space homesteading, even if you don't have a garden. Practical ways to grow food in containers, balconies and windowsills. Tips for preserving and reducing waste in a small home. Sustainable food and meal planning, living naturally, utilising your small home, and small space homesteading planning for you, plus loads of organisational resources as well. It is so exciting, and the best part is it's super affordable. It is just $9.99. And it will stay at that price. That is what its final price is going to be. So if you've been wanting to slow down, live more intentionally and reconnect with nature, then this bundle is for you. All you need to do is go to stan.store/the Slow Living Collective/p/homesteading-bundle. That is a lot to remember, isn't it? So I will put the link. The link to that is going to be in the show notes on Substack for this episode. So you should be able to see that quite easy. If not, just head to stan.store/the Slow Living Collective and you'll be able to find it there. That's stan.store/the Slow Living Collective. Now, there is something so magical about marking the changing of the seasons with these rituals, because they don't have to be complicated. They don't have to be routines or strict habits, just simple moments that help us tune into that shift that's happening around us and also within us. Because spring, it does bring all the energy and it does bring that sense of renewal and awakening. And it just feels like the perfect time to create these sorts of things, these small rituals, these small little habits that bring more grounding and connection to our daily lives. And one of my favourite ways to welcome spring is to just by incorporate some more seasonal elements into my daily rhythm. So for me, that looks like starting my morning with a lovely hot cup of coffee, which I do every day of the year without fail. But you might want to switch things up and start your morning with a warm herbal tea. Maybe you might want to do that with ingredients that reflect the season, or maybe it might be something as simple as just taking a moment to write down one thing you're grateful for, or allowing yourself to notice the little joys that come with this time of year. So it might be the flowers blooming in your garden or the sun shining so much brighter. Now, rituals can be absolutely woven into the flow of your everyday life. So whatever that looks like for you, it can just serve as this reminder that the season is here and it is waiting to be noticed and savoured. And as with anything, these things, they don't have to be big to be meaningful, because the small acts, when done with intention, create such a deeper sense of connection to the season and then also to ourselves as well. And, we live in a world that is always on, But slowing down isn't just a luxury, it is a necessity. And spring brings with it this fresh energy of the longer days. I'm already looking ahead to the clocks changing. In my mind, it's always felt like the season of promise. Like when you first feel the warmth of the sun on your face in the spring, that first nice day, which for me was yesterday, first day of meteorological spring, beautiful sunshine, out in the garden at the allotment. And it's just, when you breathe it in, it holds so much promise for the seasons ahead. And so, I think one of the biggest barriers when it comes to slowing down is just this constant pull of a busy world, of a modern world, of a technological world. It's full of endless notifications, the urge to check emails, mindless scrolling. It all adds up. We're all guilty of it, myself included. And it really does make it hard to be present. But a simple way to counteract some of these things is by setting these small intentional habits, and that can look like boundaries around our screen time, for example. And maybe that looks like having maybe a tech-free morning or evening, keeping your phone in another room while you're eating, setting a timer when you scroll social media so you don't end up in a bit of a doom scroll spiral. Whatever feels right for you, and it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You don't have to follow the crowd on Instagram that are like, I'm doing a digital detox, you'll never see me again. It doesn't have to be like that. I'm a content creator. Like I have to show up in these places. Nothing in this world gets my goat more than people that become very high and mighty about the fact, like, oh yeah, I don't use social media anymore. Like, I mean, my husband doesn't use social media, but he's not high and mighty about it. I can't stand the high and mightiness, like I'm better than you because I don't do this, or it's not for me. But you can set boundaries around screen time that work for you. Like, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with decompressing after a busy day of working or motherhood, and you just want to switch off, decompress, and watch some stupid video on an Instagram reel, right? I don't think there's any problem with that at all. Like, you get on with your good self and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. But just set the boundaries that work for you. It doesn't have to be the full-on digital detox unless you feel like that's where you're at. But beyond just technology, scheduling downtime and, that decompression that we were just talking about is just as important as scheduling work or appointments, because rest doesn't just happen, unfortunately. We really do have to make space for it. So maybe that might work for you. Like, if you struggle with that, maybe block off time in your calendar for that recharge, and whatever that looks like for you. Prioritize rest in the way that you would prioritize any other commitment, because when you do that, it becomes part of your rhythm and not just an afterthought. Before we dive back into today's episode, I want to take a quick moment to share something I absolutely love: Riverford Organic. If you've been looking for a way to make your meals feel more seasonal, wholesome, and aligned with your values, Riverford is a game changer. Riverford delivers fresh organic produce right to your door, straight from the farm. Everything is grown with care and respect for the earth, so you know that when you're cooking with their ingredients, you're nourishing both your body and the planet. And what I love most about Riverford is their commitment to slow food, cooking and eating in tune with the seasons. If you want to try one of Riverford's fruit and or vegetable boxes, then I highly recommend them. We have been getting them for 18 months now and absolutely love every single one, and I am just as excited about receiving them now as I was then. And we have actually branched out. We now get our milk from the Riverford dairy, and we also get their cheese as well. And sometimes we also buy our meat from there. There are so many options. If you want to give it a try, head to the slowlivingcollective.com/Riverford. That's the slowlivingcollective.com/Riverford. And you can sign up. You'll get your first box, and then you will get a £15 credit off of your next box. That's the slowlivingcollective.com/Riverford. Now we're going to have to talk about learning to say no, because a huge part of slowing down is actually about learning to say no and setting boundaries, because it's so easy to get caught up in obligations, saying yes to every invite, every project, every request. But the truth is, when we say yes to everything, we really end up exhausted and stretched too thin to really enjoy any of it. And I know it's really difficult for some people's personalities. You know, a lot of people have that people pleaser aspect of their personality. And, you know, I see people talking about it a lot. I am not a people pleaser. I've never been a people pleaser, in fact. But that comes with its own issues as well. Like I was talking to a friend just today, we were talking about people pleasing and saying no and setting boundaries and things like that. And I was like, I've not been a people pleaser since birth. Like, I've never had the people pleaser gene. And, you know, actually what I actually said was like, but sometimes I feel like I'm too harsh and unfeeling, because like the answer is always no, I don't have time, and sorry. And I don't mean that in like a super negative way. Like, of course I have time for people, but yeah, I have really strict boundaries and feelings around my time, and it takes a lot for me to negotiate them. Just as an example, I have like a very set week. I always used to see my mum on a Monday, and I also take my eldest to a class on a Monday. Then on a Tuesday I would always see my granddad. On Wednesday I would spend the afternoon with my mum. On Thursday we have classes, and then on Friday we also have classes, and then we see my dad in the afternoon. And yeah, so it's, you know, obviously home educating. A lot of my time I have my mornings at home, and we do a lot of our, like, home education doesn't look like school. So if you're hearing this from a school perspective, it's not going to look the same. But we do a lot of learning. We'll do a lot of learning at home in the mornings, but we're learning all the time, right? But when we're out and about, we're doing a bit more hands-on learning, let's say, if we're trying to apply this in a sort of schooled mindset. And now, obviously, with my granddad passing away, we don't have Tuesdays with him. And so that looks a little different. But it is nice, because I used to have Thursdays as my day at home. And then there's a few things that have come up in terms of like classes and stuff. And so I didn't really have that nice full relaxed day at home. So naturally, losing granddad, I have claimed this Tuesday, and tried to reframe it as, you know, of course I would much rather be trotting to my granddad's and having lunch with him and spending the afternoon with him, as I did for 15 years. Like, you know, that's how long I've been having like really, it's probably longer than that. Well, I'm 40. Yeah, since I came back from university, basically, when I was like 22. So, you know, we're talking about a long time where we really had that intentional time as an adult, and obviously spent tons of time, like an immense amount of time with my grandparents as a child. But once I came back from university, because I went away, once I came back, you know, we really prioritised that time. I would originally started as dinner with my nan and granddad, and then once I had the kids, it sort of migrated into a lunchtime thing. And of course I would much rather be doing that than having the free day on a Tuesday that I'm now left with. But reframing that and thinking that actually, you know, that is a sacred day. And this feeds back into that whole idea of people pleasing and setting boundaries in that it'll take a lot for me to give up my Tuesday, because my Tuesday is really sacred. Having a day at home is important to me to recalibrate, and so the answer, unfortunately, is always no. But because when we do say yes to everything, we just end up really stretched thin. So think about your life, maybe take a step back, just ask yourself, does this align with what I value most? Does this bring me joy? And if it doesn't, give yourself permission to say no to it. Because like I say quite a lot on this podcast, slowing down isn't about doing nothing, but it is about making space for what matters to us, and is about shifting our focus from more to meaningful. So as we step into spring, maybe take a moment to pause and reflect. What would slowing down look like for you right now? Maybe it's fewer commitments, maybe it's more rest, or maybe it's just being more intentional with your time. But whatever it is, give yourself permission to embrace it. Now, before we wrap up today's episode, I just want to leave you with a few reflective questions to just help you integrate this entire conversation into your own life. So, take a moment to pause and think about this. What is one small change you could make today to slow down just a little bit more? Maybe it's setting aside a few minutes of quiet time, taking a deep breath before your day. Whatever it looks like, I would love to hear it. So don't forget to come over to Substack. That's theslowlivingcollective.substack.com. I always put all the show notes on Substack, and you can have a look there. Leave me a comment because I would love to hear what that looks like for you. Another question you could reflect on is, how does nature's pace influence your mood and energy? So do you notice how it can make you feel more grounded or more relaxed? Or perhaps it challenges you to slow down in ways you hadn't thought about before? Because nature's gentle rhythm is this really powerful reminder, but we have to tune into it. It's there, it is in all of us. We are nature, we are an active part of it. It is there, and it reminds us that we don't have to rush through life, and it is okay to go at our own pace. It is always so easy, I would say, once you tune into it. Look outside of your window, right? We all live in homes that have a window. Look outside of your window, or stand on your front doorstep or your back doorstep, your balcony, in the street, wherever, and have a look at what nature's doing. Because actually, what is occurring in nature is inherent in all of us. So when we look outside at the beginning of spring and we look around and we see the buds slowly unfurling on the trees, we haven't gone from the dead of winter and bare trees to trees in full bloom. And it is just that idea that we can go slowly and that we can emerge back into the world in our own time. Now, I'd love for you to share your thoughts with me, and you can come and find me over on social media. I am only on Instagram, but you can find me there at the Slow Living Collective. But also just head over to Substack. That's the slowness.substack.com. I would love to hear how you're reflecting on these questions and maybe integrating some of the ideas from today's episode into your own life. And here's something for you. I invite you to try one of the exercises or rituals that I talked about today. Whether it's a quick breathing exercise, a walk in nature, a simple springtime ritual, just take a moment to engage with one of these practices or find your own that aligns with you more and see how it shifts your day. And so I would love to hear about that. And who knows, maybe your story will be featured in a future episode. And let's just keep this conversation going. It's a brand new season, and let's inspire each other to slow down and step into this season with intention. So as we come to the end of today's episode, I hope you are just feeling like you understand spring is a time of renewal and growth. But also it can bring with it a sense of hurry and pressure. And when we embrace the gentle rhythms of the season, we are better able to create a space for slowness and intentionality. And, you know, when we are more mindful and weave mindfulness into our days, connect with nature, and craft these spring rituals that really work alongside the season, you know, we can bloom in our own time, as it were. And my final thought for you today is this: even the tiniest steps towards a slower lifestyle can really create a profound impact on you. You don't have to overhaul everything all at once. In fact, don't overhaul everything all at once. Sometimes it is the smallest and most intentional moments that really make a difference. So whether it's that mindful breath or a quiet walk outside, these simple practices can really add up to a life lived with more presence and more meaning. So let's start to emerge after the quiet coldness of winter, but let's do it in our own time. And we don't ever have to rush if we don't want to. And just keep an eye on nature and watch what it is doing, because it is mimicked in our own lives. We just have to be open to the idea that we are also part of nature. And actually, once you notice that ebb and flow throughout the season, throughout the year, you realise that you're just an integral part of it, and it becomes so natural. So it might feel completely out of this world to you at the moment, and you might be thinking, I don't know how to live seasonally. Don't stress about it. We don't want high cortisol levels. We don't want that at all. But come over and follow me over on Instagram. I share a lot more in like a day-to-day capacity there. And let's chat. You know, if you're feeling like, oh, I want to live slowly, but I'm so overwhelmed by it, come chat with me. My inbox is always open. So thank you so much for joining me today. I am so grateful to have you as part of this community, and I can't wait to continue exploring intentional and seasonal living with you in future episodes. So I want to remind you, take a moment to slow down, to breathe deeply, and embrace the beauty of spring in your own way. Now, thanks again for listening to this episode. I know it was a bit on the longer side in the end. That's me, I'm a bit of a talker, but thank you so much for listening. You can find me, as always, over on Instagram at The Slow Living Collective. You can find me over on Substack, theslowlivingcollective.substack.com. And until next time, I will catch you in my next episode.